Okay, I am trying something new, but I am currently live, and hopefully this is working. So as you come on in, let me know that you can hear me and you can see me, or at least you can hear me. I'm not going to get up and dance or anything. So just let me know if you are here or not. And I am going to, hi, Kristen. Yay. Okay, I'm gonna grab, excuse me, I'm gonna grab the YouTube link for anyone that wants it. What? Okay, got it. I started this just a couple minutes early so I would have time to grab the YouTube link and make sure this is working. It occurred to me that the Restream app is, it's not like an app. You can access your account on Safari. Like, well, I can use Safari on my phone, and that service like always works well. So you're on my phone camera, and then I can manage the comments via the computer. So if it looks like I'm not staring at the camera, it's because I'm staring at the comments on the computer. But I think this might be the way forward. So that's pretty cool. And if I get a little bit smarter, I still think I can plug in to showing you videos on my computer for the chats that's useful for. So I'm getting there. I'm not like the most savvy, not quite 30-year-old on the planet, but I'm figuring it out. Okay, people can hear me, people can see me. People are on YouTube as well. Excellent. All right, so gosh, okay, so we're talking about planning your training sessions. So not what's happening during the session, not what's happening after the session, what's happening before you get the dog out, what's happening before you're expecting the dog to be ready to go. So the prep work that might start at the end of your last session that goes up to the point before you're getting your dog out. So we're going to try to talk about that. Because I find that when for one, when I go to the agility field and I don't have a plan, my training is crap. I'm not doing anything all that productive. So when I don't have a plan, and so when I don't have a plan, it just kind of feels like, okay, my dog and I are doing agility, but it doesn't feel like I'm making progress towards anything. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't feel like there's as much progress to be had when you just go out and you do agility without having put some thought into it. And I think it's one of those things that I'm sure I've shown my frustration with when I work with family members and I say, well, what do you want to do? And they don't know. And it's like, okay, let's have a plan. So I would rather go out and train with a plan of what you're going to do purely because I like to see progress. And I'm kind of finding that some of us, more so than others, have a hard time making a plan, making a goal without competition kind of sitting over them. So I realize maybe right now it's a little bit more difficult to make a plan and keep a plan. I know we've had these discussions in the mindset class because of this. Like they need something to progress to, which is why before we started talking about training plans in the mindset class, I made them do like a 5-year plan, so that there was something that they were aiming for. That just because everything is canceled right now doesn't mean that you're not working towards anything. That's silly. I would urge you to make some goals anyways, because it's just this year, or maybe a little, I mean, we don't know how long that the pandemic is going to truly impact things. We're already seeing even the events that are starting to come back. They're different. They're being run a little differently. So we know that things are going. Is there a frog in the window? I got distracted by that comment. It's my dinosaur. I have a thing for dinosaurs. He's a dinosaur. And I have a dragon on my desk. It's just kind of my thing. He can hang out. Okay, I don't know where to put him now without getting back up. But I also have I have Toothless on my desk. And completely distracted. I need some focus training. So we know that we're going to be impacted for a while. We just kind of have to accept that and know that eventually you're going to go to an event again. You're going to enter another competition. That is the reality for most of us. So if goal setting has been kind of the problem and putting a damper on your training plans, set some anyways. And see where it goes. So that's kind of, I sort of went off on a little bit of a tangent, but it all applies. I'm putting him up. He'll distract me. So then, even if you don't have this huge goal that's like in the immediate future, and that's kind of what it feels like right now with Shrek and even Shock, really. All of my dogs have no goals that are like, I'm going to prepare for X event at X time. I just have this umbrella feeling of what I would like to achieve with them, or what I would like them to be able to do in their career. And I don't care when it happens. So that every training session I do, whether it's preparing for an event or not, keeps me on that track. So you can choose more of a kind of process goal than an event or outcome related goal if the uncertainty of those events gets you down. So play around with those things. If you need to have a goal to be able to feel more committed to your training. Also know that it's okay if you're not training right now. It's fine to be taking a break. This would be a little bit longer of a break. I usually take about 6 weeks off of downtime during a competition year. So this would be like a really long time off for me, but it's okay. It's fine if you're not doing anything. Just get back in it when you're ready to get back in it. But I think most of you are still trying to train and keep up on things. And I think the competing at home is, not a bad idea. If you haven't looked into that, I would look into that. And I might think of that as like a really good stepping stone, especially for dogs that might have been debuting this summer, because you're still going to have to run full courses, but you get to run them in your backyard or at your training facility, and but you're going to get rid of those reinforcers. So I know that's another tangent, but I think that's a nice split for some young dogs, to for humans to get that trial like data without having to enter a trial. I think that's kind of neat. So anyways, training plans. That's really what we're here for. I'm just checking, making sure everything is still working properly. I don't have any new questions. Okay. Super. Ooh, pressed the wrong thing. Okay. So training plans, putting them together. You're going to start with, what are you training? What skill or piece of the skill are you going to be working on in this one session? And sometimes that also means, who are you training? Because if it's a handling skill, am I focusing more on my execution of said handling skill, or is my execution of this handling skill already pretty fluent, and I would like to work on my dog's response to this handling skill? So I want to make sure I know who my learner is, if it's me or the dog, and what skill is it? What are we going to work on? Is it some jumping skill, or some contact skill, or a handling skill, or start lines, things like that. So just make sure that you know what you're training and who you're training and who you are training. If you don't have that objective, it will feel like you're just going out and doing freestyle agility. And that's the stuff that gets kind of messy, in my experience. So then you have your skill that you're going to train. And now you need to develop the structure of that session. So that includes the setup. So where are you going to train it? Are you at home? Are you going to go to the park? Are you borrowing your friend's field? Are you at your training facility doing a rental? Are all of those things. Okay. So figure out where the session is going to take place. If you're practicing some handling skill or a specific obstacle skill, are you going to practice it in the same part of your yard that you always practice it? Or are you going to move it to another part of your yard or do it on a different jump? We were working threadle slices with Skreek, and the first day we did the training, I did it on one jump, and then the next day we did the training, I purposefully changed jumps because I didn't want her associating that skill with that one specific jump, because she's strange like that. I want to keep changing those things because she patterns so easily, more easily than my other dogs. So that was a detail that I put into the plan. So the environment. Then you can also think about, if it's just a single obstacle skill, how are you going to control the dog's starting point? So if I'm working on a specific weave pole entry, for example, I want the things like the dog's starting point and my starting point to be consistent. Because if I'm going to systematically change where my dog is starting or where I am starting from, I need to have the original starting point consistent. Because what will happen, and I see this time and time again, is we think we're changing things and making things more difficult, and we sometimes aren't. or we make it too hard too fast, and then we flop to the other side, we make it too easy. So I want to keep those details pretty clean. So I often, why don't I have a voice? I don't talk to anyone. So I will often use the station because I have to physically pick the station up and change it so that I'm very aware of where I'm putting it. I'm not just guessing. Some of you have seen my 2x2 videos, and I have the round rubber targets, and I will put those down to keep myself very, very honest about where my position is in relation to the obstacle that I'm training. So things like that, those details matter. And if I plan those beforehand, if I've kind of drawn out what I'm going to do and I know where my little starting positions are going to be, that's one less thing that I have to think about in the training session. And that frees up part of my brain to pay more attention to the dog during the training. And we could all use that. We could all use that little extra bit of brain power to give to the dog. Right? So other details that I might plan beforehand is and this is now we're kind of going into the behavior, and if I'm going to work on weave pole entries, am I working on collecting into the weaves? This is what I'm going to pause for just a second because Kristen has a great comment. This is what we usually rely on instructors for. 100%. This is what happens. And I think we should build on that momentum. There's so many great online classes, so we can do that. We can use the instructor's knowledge, and I'm saying take it a step further and use that momentum to do this a little bit for yourself. One great thing, so like for example, if you take a 6-week class with FDSA, and you might be planning to sign up for another similar class with FDSA, but it's not often that the classes like bleed into each other, right? They kind of stand alone things in that case. So how do you continue the momentum of your 6-week working spot with an instructor into your own training? How do you continue those skills? And that's what we need to be working on. So definitely it's an extra appreciation for that effort from the instructors. And yeah, okay. A little bit of a tangent. So take the momentum that you get from your instructor, and at least like think about that if like an in-person class too, is that you're only seeing that instructor once. You have to be able to take that momentum from your once a week in-person class and apply it to the rest of your week if you're going to see progress. And believe me, if you teach classes, I know how hard it is to get students to do homework, and I think it's because of this planning piece. They either don't know what to do, or they don't have you telling them, so they don't have you telling them what to do. So it's really difficult. Wendy, thank you so much. I'm glad it's been helpful for you. It was, I put as much in there, and I don't know how I kept it under 90 minutes, but it got done. I enjoyed putting it together. So definitely this is why we're talking about it, because I think the planning, the training is why we don't train. or why we don't progress when we feel like we should be progressing. So all good points. You guys are, I'll get back on track. Okay, so dealing with the behavior. So whatever you're gonna train, there are so many great instructors out there. Just pick one, and I am happy to be it if you pick me. So once you select your behavior, so weave poles are hot on my mind, obviously, because the weave pole workshop is happening right now. But I can choose what the behavior is, working on entries, for example, and then I need to plan out my repetitions. And I can't say that I can plan out exactly how the repetitions are going to go when I'm teaching a group class, but I have this general idea of I'm going to ask for behavior 1, then I'm going to ask for behavior 2, then I'm going to ask for behavior 3. So I have this general idea of how I would like the training session to go when I have a dog and handler in front of me. I'm going to try to attempt that same thing when I'm training my own dogs. So if I'm going to add some distractions to my weave pole entries, I'm going to plan out those reps in advance. And I'm going to number them in level of difficulty. Okay, so I'm going, and let's just have a rating scale of I can increase the difficulty of the weave poles. I can start at 1, that's super easy for my dog, and I can rate the level of difficulty up to 10. And the level of difficulty could just depend on what you're training in that moment, what the objective is. Because if my objective is really difficult angles into the weave poles, I'm probably not also adding distractions. Because if there are still really difficult angles for the dog, they're not ready for distractions. So this is why, so I don't get too far on the tangent, this is why I wanted to talk about splitting your training separately, because I could explode on that topic for several hours. So you're going to rank some levels of difficulty of the skill that you're training that day. Okay. And then you're going to plan out the reps. So rep number 1 is going to be a level 1 difficulty. And you're going to see how it goes. Then rep number 2 is going to be level 2 difficulty. Then 3, level 3 difficulty. And then you go, all right, based on my dog, should I continue to make it harder, or should I proactively make it a little bit easier for a couple of reps? And I refer to this as ping-ponging. And in my experience, I only ping-pong well if I have pre-written the repetitions and pre-planned to ping-pong. Because my brain says it's going great, make it harder, it's going great, make it harder, it's going great, make it harder. And then you hit the wall, and then you get yourself into trouble. So I would rather back off of the wall before I hit it and see if then I can push the wall. So pre-planning your actual amount of repetitions, it will help you stay ahead of making sure you don't hit the wall. Also, it will naturally cap your session length. Because that's another thing I am brilliant at, is training for way too long, because none of my dogs will tell me when to quit. I'm going to come over here to the comments real quick. Ring rentals are often limited to what is set, so plans often need modifying. I often go with several plans to best accommodate. I don't have the luxury of my own space and equipment. This is a good point. Let's talk about this for a second. We are sometimes limited. And I have a few ideas. So the first one is so be a little bit flexible in what you might train that day. So if you're going to a ring rental, have a few things from your list that you can choose from, so that when you see the layout, you can choose the one that best fits the layout. Thing two would be maybe contacting the facility that you're renting and asking / suggesting that they just post the setup, not the numbers, not something that, you know, belongs to the instructor or anything, but just the setup, or at least these are the obstacles that are set up this week. That, I think, is a really good suggestion and a really good business move for facilities. So I think if it was suggested, it could be well received. So that's my other plan, because then if you can go on their website or their Facebook page and see, okay, this is what's set up, you can make your plans based on the setup. Okay, so those are definitely the two things I would do. And the other thing is, usually you can get away with moving a jump or something as long as you put it back exactly where it goes. So if you can make do, so if you take your 2 or 3 things that you're willing to train that day based on the setup, and you can tweak a couple of jumps to make it fit better, that's probably an option too. But my favorite is just asking for the setup ahead of time. I know Argus Ranch, that is close here, Jordan is often posting what is set up in the rings available to rent. The building in Wisconsin that I design courses for, she will often share the ring setup ahead of time, just because it's really helpful for people, I think. So another comment, pre-planning to ping pong. Hard to say, but so critical. Yes, it's like, yeah, it is hard to say, but it works so well. And I have saved so many training sessions that way. And I think dogs will train for longer if the goalposts are not constantly moving. And I think we can relate to that. If every time we were successful, it was made harder, eventually you wouldn't want to be successful anymore. You would be like, I don't want it to get any harder, so I'm gonna just slow down and not be as happy about it, right? Can you kind of see how that feeling might happen? It might happen for me. I mean, if everything's going well, why do you need it to get harder? So anyways, pre-plan your ping ponging. I love ping pong planning. Me too, Kim. And I definitely just walk out to the agility field either with, you know, I rip out a piece of paper of one of my notebooks and I carry it with me and I put it in my training vest pocket, or I bring the whiteboard with me and it's, you know, somewhere off behind the camera or something. But definitely pre-plan the reps. You're going to get a lot more out of your dog that way. And you're going to be less surprised, I think, when you pre-plan the reps, because you will have had to think, what is my dog capable of? It's when we go rogue, this is a true story. It happened yesterday. We're working on the throttle slices. And then the session was over. I was done working with Graham and Skreek, and then he starts just sending his dog over jumps and attempts to use the throttle slice behavior in a sequence. And we have not progressed to that. And he didn't walk it, and he didn't think about it, and he just did it. And it's like, you were not cleared for that, sir. Stop that. Okay, so no going rogue. So the point of the true story was that usually when we go rogue, we ask the dog of something that they're not capable of. Because when we go off script, we don't have the data to support our question. But when we pre-plan, we can oh, I know, Wendy, I make it sound like a secret mission, and he's aborted mission and he's no longer communicating with, you know, his commanding officer, and he's gone rogue. I might have a little bit of a control issue. But that is the way it felt, was like, no one cleared you for this. Why did you think that you were capable of that? And like, it was fine. Like, it was no big deal. She got a cookie, whatever. But when we don't pre-plan, I think we have this tendency to push them too far, without really knowing if they're ready for that. And I prefer to ask the dog questions that I'm fairly sure that they know. I don't do a ton of experimenting unless I think the experiment is harmless. And by harmless, I mean that I'm going to reward the dog no matter what, and that I'm not going to confuse the dog by experimenting. Does that like make sense, how I'm looking at experiments or not? Comments are coming in. No longer communicating with the commanding. Oh my God, please don't share these things outside of this live. I mean, it really isn't like that, but when we train, it's better if I'm in charge. Mostly, I sometimes go rogue, mostly to train for those times when I don't get to walk a course at a trial, but she is very capable of that. I could never do that with the boys. And some dogs are going to be more capable of handling that. But Nikki, even with a not walking the course, you would still know what the course is. You're not making the course up. So that's like a different skill. I would totally practice, you know, looking at having built a course and without walking it, practice running it. I would do that. That's different than just running a course without knowing what the course is. Another comment. I found that in order to get my gym workouts in, I only do them when I have a scheduled session with the trainer. I'm a little bit the same, to be honest. I have to find some other motivation to work out. I am the same way with dog training. I don't do well making my own plans. This has to do with multiple things. What do you say to people who really can't plan on their own? Pay someone to plan it for you. That's an option. I find just, so based on that, like, you have to ask yourself, is signing up for to observe an online class, is that enough? Because the training plans will be there for you, right? The difference would be that if you're just observing an online class, the training plans are going to be more generic. You're going to have to put in a little bit more effort of filming and collecting data to then individualize the next training session for yourself. And then from there, if that's not enough, then committing to a working spot in an online class so that you get that feedback on a regular basis and those more personalized training plans for yourself. Or, of course, private coaching, either in person or online. Those are definitely options. But I would say, because I am working on this habit forming stuff in the mindset class, that ask yourself, do you plan what your dogs eat? Do you plan what you eat? Do you plan your day at all? Because I'll show you guys this. My whole life is like this. This is my week, you guys. I live my life planning. It's very easy for me. I enjoy it. I also get a little stressed out when things don't go according to the life map. So, I'm working on it. So there's some trade-offs. So if this is not what your life looks like, I haven't filled in what I'm doing this week. It's flexible during pandemic times. So, nope, I get meals delivered, so I don't have to plan. So then if that's what happens, then that seems to be your style, is to just, it's that you can have someone else do it and help you with it. So I like to look to my life outside. Or do you schedule anything? Do you plan anything? If that's already kind of in your skill set somewhere else in your life, you can apply those skills to the planning of your training. If it's not how you go about things, and trust me, I live with someone who does not go about these things. Nothing is planned. I don't even know if he knows what a clock is. That's an exaggeration, obviously. I'll be nice. But planning a training session and record keeping is not something that is going to come easily for him. So if that is more your personality, start small, very, very small. Kathy, thank you. I'm gonna not miss these comments, I promise. So if you're starting small, habit forming, think about splitting this behavior down into as small of a piece as you can. Like, for instance, the first thing would be is to just schedule when you're going to train. Just pick a time and do that for a week. You put it on your calendar or your whiteboard or your whatever, and you say, I'm going to train every day at 3:30 for a week, because now you have the first step planned. You don't have to do anything more than that, but do it for a week. And then add the next plan. Then for the second week, I'm going to train every day at 3:30, and I'm going to work on X. Just say what you're going to work on. Right? So just build it like you would any other behavior, because you're all dog trainers. You all know how to break down behaviors and teach behaviors to animals. You're no different. Hate to break it to you. All right, so making sure I'm not missing anything. It's okay if you don't plan anything. If hot mess is what you want to call it and what is working for you, keep doing it. So if you already schedule when you're going to train, then just take the next step. Schedule what you're going to train. Schedule where you're going to train. So just a little bit. Oh, there was a question up here. I didn't want to miss it. How do you plan to avoid one more time? Because when I've mapped out those repetitions, so if I've said, if I've mapped out 10 repetitions, I'm going to do them like this. I'm going to do level 1, level 2, level 3, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6, level 4, level 7. That was it. If the level 7 was the last rep on the whiteboard, that's the last rep on the whiteboard. You're done. There is no more. You have to avoid that urge. You have to shut it down. The other thing that I do sometimes is that the number of cookies in my hand. If I'm working on something that is better suited with food in my hand, then I'm going to reach in. I'm going to have a handful. My hands are quite small, so that's helpful for limiting the training. I do not reach in for more. In fact, when I feel that I have only one cookie in my hand, the session is over, because I've called the dog to me and used the last cookie as a "you're all done now" cookie here. So I stop one cookie short of running out. So those things can help. I've also suggested to some students to use a timer, and when the timer goes off, you are done. No questions asked. Listen to the timer. Kara says that using the planner is really helpful. Oh my gosh, I loved planners in schools. Like, that's like, you have to know. I just love it. What type of book do I have? This is Erin Condren's life planner, life book, life map, life something. And I use the stickers and the markers and the everything, all the pretty things. I do similar stuff in my training plan journals. And like the newest thing I've been working on that's not work, because I have to do these things, is hand lettering. And I've been working on that, learning all these pretty fonts and making everything so pretty. So I just enjoy it. Okay. Analysis paralysis. For sure, this can happen. We talked about this a little bit in my gold threads of the mindset class too. Is that when you're looking for stuff, it can kind of go, oh God, there are too many details. I need to take a step back. But mostly my advice for that is to just choose one thing to dive down. And I don't over analyze the data. Just choose and start small, right? So if you can't plan 10 reps, plan 5 reps, see how they go. If it went great, increase the difficulty of those 5 reps the next time. And if you run out of things to think of to make it difficult, then that's when you ask for help, because there's always something you can do. Okay, back to planning. I am glad that the handful of cookies and the timers are helping. I'm really happy to read that. When you're planning these repetitions, you do have to have a little bit of a plan for how you're going to deliver rewards and how you're going to deal with errors. Because I never want to feel like I don't know what to say to my dog in a situation. That paralyzed, oh my God, I don't know what just happened, thinking moment of what you should do, and the dog is looking back at you and you're just looking back at it, and it's just what feels like hours of awkward silence between you and your dog, I think is really aversive. And I think we see that happen in a lot of dogs, whether they go flat or they stress up. I think that, oh God, what just happened? I don't know what to do in this situation, can kill a training session like that. So you have to practice and know, what am I going to do when the dog gets it right? What am I going to do when the dog gets it wrong? And so it's just automatic. You see the behavior you want, you do X. You see a behavior you didn't want, you do Y. And you just keep the session going. And to that effect, that's the only time I edit the script. So this isn't going to work because you are mirrored, but I will try to use just check marks and X's. So it shouldn't be too hard, but you're going to see this as a mirror image. I think. Are you? I don't know. Does that look like a check mark up? Oh, it does. Okay. You guys see this normal. Isn't that cool? Okay. Overexcited, apparently. So I'll stand up then. I love it when things work out. Okay. Everyone can see this? Super. All right, so I've got my 10 reps mapped out. Whatever they're planning to be. I don't know. Gets this one right. Gets this one right. Gets this one right. Gets this one wrong. Okay? My protocol is usually to repeat this rep. Okay? So even, let's just say, so the fourth rep was supposed to be, was a level 3. And the fifth rep was supposed to be a level 4. Okay? But they just got level 3 wrong. So I'm not going to increase to level 4. I'm going to repeat this one. But it still takes up that fifth rep. So now everything just kind of moves down one. That's the only time I go off script. But however I get to here, whether I'm having to repeat this one and then do number 4 here, and then I back off to a number 2, and then I go back to a 4, and then a 5, but we had another mistake, so I repeat 5 again, right? That's the only time I go off script, is if I have to repeat something for an error, because that's, but having these 2 errors does not add 2 more reps to my dog's session, because I think that's where we can potentially dig a hole. Because if you win for 10 and your dog made 2 errors, you're barely at that. I mean, right, you're at only 80% of fluency. There's no way I would. What if I was supposed to end this session at a level 7? My dog's telling me he's not ready for a level 7 because he's made a couple of mistakes along the way. So I want to just end at number 5, and then maybe my next session, starts at a level 4, and then maybe about 3/4 of the way through, now my goal is to have a level 7, and then maybe back down. Does that make some sense-ish? I'll leave that there. So beautiful. That's about as pretty as it gets. Does that make sense? I lost everyone. Oh, there we go. Someone says it makes sense. Okay, good. Cool. It's making sense. And that kind of leads me to this responding to the data point. That my intent for the first session might have been to end on a level 7, but a couple of errors pulled me back and I ended on a level 5. That's good information, because if I had kept going and tried to get to that level 7 anyways, I might be doing something, or I might have missed a split in the behavior that my dog's telling me he needs, and I need to go back and review the video and look for it and then start again. But in general, whatever I end on can be the next starting point. I don't need to start with level 1s and 2s anymore, because that's piece of cake. I can always go back to those if I need to, but if they were level 1 and 2 on this session, they're now much too easy for the dog has progressed. So that each of these, so it's not like there's only 10 levels of difficulty for every behavior. There's maybe an infinite number of levels of difficulty for every behavior. Your job is to focus on keeping your dog progressing through the middle. So I like to work, say, maybe through 3 or 4 levels per training session, but the levels are constantly changing. Does that make sense? So what was a 1 is now so easy you wouldn't think to train it, because it's so easy. Your dog is definitely gonna get it right. Like, it's one of those behaviors that you wouldn't think about reinforcing anymore. It's too easy. It's too easy, especially when you are training behaviors that are going to change. It's like 2x2s, right? So when I'm training 2x2s, they start really easy, where the dog's just going, there is no weaving, right? Ugh. The poles are like this, and the dog's just going straight through them. And over time, you rotate them so that they're looking like straight poles, like straight competition poles. So if I started over at this every single time I went out to train weave poles, I never get past the original level 5. My dog's gonna be wildly successful, which is not bad, but I'm never going to get to move forward. So the level of difficulty should change. And what was a level 1, eventually, once it's reinforced, it kind of falls off. And you need to start at this new starting point. Don't start back at the level 1 every time. The level 1 should change, right? Or, so you can think about it that way, or you can just number the steps in the training until you keep going. I just like to work within a 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 ranking system. I think a lot of people struggle with that, Crystal. So, but it's, let me think about this. What's a real life example? I can't think of one right now. My brain is toast. Anyways, you don't go back to the very, very, very beginning every time you train something. Your starting point changes with every training session. If you if the training session was successful enough. Are you ping-ponging to maintain confidence and enthusiasm as you progress the levels? Yes. So I view ping-ponging as definitely the way to keep the dog going, yes, I want to try again. It's a little bit more like a slot machine rather than a, oh, I got it right, but she's going to make it harder. That sort of thing. Whereas, and also it keeps you from hitting that wall. So when I ping pong, this is what I find. So a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, a level 4. This is where I'm starting to say tax the dog's brain. I'm halfway through the training session if I'm doing about 10 reps. So I've made it harder. Everything's going great. And then I'm going to go boom, boom. Because if my dog has shown me that he can do these with no problem, this is like a piece of cake. So then I'm going to give him a couple of those piece of cake ones. But then here's what I'm going to do. I'm either going to go straight back to 4 or I'm going to go directly to 5. He's already told me he can do 4. So I'm going to do a 4 or 5 there. And then I might do 6. And now I might do 3, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Because here's what happens. This is now my new starting point. Whatever that difficulty is, this is now my new number 1. And then I go from there. So I find that by proactively taking off the intensity, they're more likely to try again. They are more confident. They the goalposts aren't constantly out of reach, and it can help a little bit of decompression mid training session. If your dog struggles with repetition, I would try it this way, because maybe your dog struggles with the goalpost constantly moving. Maybe you're doing this 1 through 4, but maybe as soon as this is what I usually see happens. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and everything was fine, but now we start to get the failures, and you stay at 5, and then when you pile up failures like that, let's just say that's what happened. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 failures in a row when you only had 4 reinforcers before it. Now your failures are outweighing your reinforcers for that session, and the dog is like, there's no end in sight. I'm never getting a cookie for the rest of my life. And that can be confidence killing. Or I see this happen, which is, so we get the 2 errors in a row. We know, oh, okay, I should change something. So the next repetition we do is a number 1. And I think that's a mistake. I think completely starting over, going from 5 to a 1 is too big of a jump back. I would go to the place that they were last successful, a 4, and maybe stay there for a couple of reps, and then try the 5 again. And if the 5 is still a problem, I know I've missed something, that there's a 4.5 out there that I need to find. And I might not be able to find in that moment, but when I go back and I watch the video, I might be able to find it. And I also want to watch the video because it might not be that I have a 4 point, that I need to find a 4.5. It might be that I was working in the park, and for these first 4 reps, no one was around. And right at this point, some stranger and his crew of dogs shows up, and I didn't see them. Right? So you don't, you might not be able to save it in the moment, but when you watch your video, you should be able to. So this is where, in trying to figure out the level of difficulties, this is where I might do some experimentation, just a little bit. Just to see. Oh, is this hard for you? Okay, we'll make it. So I might try something, take some notes, try something else, take some notes. It might, and in that case, the purpose of the session, I would, I would not call it a training session. I would call it a data collection session, and I would reward everything. And I would then go back and look at what the dog told me he knows or doesn't know, and then I would plan my difficulties based on what he told me he knows and doesn't know. And sometimes that's what I have to do when I have a dog and a handler in front of me that I haven't worked with before, either online or in person. I go, I don't know what's a 1 and what's a 4 for your dog. I just met him 30 seconds ago. So I have to do some data collecting, and the dog gets rewarded for everything in those cases. So if it's a data collection session, reward the dog for everything, because I don't think it's fair necessarily to go, well, I didn't think you knew that answer anyways, and I asked you. That's not cool. So I just, and we just don't count it as a training session. It's data collection. Fascinating how your brain processes these things. I'm glad you find it fascinating. So it's exhausting sometimes, actually. I'm glad it's making sense. Exactly, Crystal. You have to deal with these distractions every time you train, and I am amazed at it every single time I see your videos. Okay. Any other questions? Was this helpful? We're gonna think about wrapping this up in a bit. I guess my biggest advice for you is to plan out the repetitions. That's helped me the most. Cool. Super. I'm glad. Woo. Okay. You guys are so great. This is fantastic, positive reinforcement for me. Plan out your repetitions. If you, I will put it in the comments here. There we go. I put it in the feed, and I will, in the group, I will post, I have a referral link with the company that gets us both $10 off a future order, or your first, I think you get $10 off your first order, and I get $10 off a future order. So if you look into using the Erin Condren planners and things, I don't have one yet. It's on my list to get, but the Erin Condren company does custom whiteboards, if that's your thing. It's on my wish list to get one for every room. Okay. So I will post that. So try to plan out your reps. If you aren't sure about something, post it in the group. There are so many brilliant minds in this group that someone can help you. Someone will be able to answer your question. Someone will be able to help you plan out your repetitions. Someone will be able to help you with your ping ponging. One for every room, just because I like whiteboards, not because I think I need one. I have this whiteboard here. I have a whiteboard on the outside of my office door, so that I can write to Graham what I'm doing up here, if he's allowed to come in or not. or if he's allowed to make noise downstairs, things like that, play the bassoon, allowed. Anyways, I do hear myself. I don't have a problem. I can stop anytime, but I have a whiteboard downstairs for my training that I do down there, and I have a whiteboard that I keep in my car in case I need to plan out my reps on the board. And then there's a whiteboard in the dog room so I can write down the things that I need to order. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I have so much OCD. It's not a problem. I mean, most of the time, Kathy, most of the time. My training whiteboard right now, Kirsty, is probably blank, but yeah, the next time I fill it out, I will, I can post a picture in the group. My one downstairs, I'll post a picture in the group because my one downstairs might have something on it. It should. I know I should get a kickback on regular whiteboards from Amazon. I like these things. I personally can't do anything without writing it down. So whiteboards help me save the planet a little bit because I also have 100 notebooks and I know that's not great. So whiteboard, if it doesn't need to be a permanent thing, I'll use the whiteboard instead of a notebook. So I need them everywhere in case I need to write something down. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Remember, we'll do another one next Monday. I'll do another poll and see what you guys want to talk about. Maybe we'll talk about splitting our training since we sort of dived into that. Dove into that a little bit tonight. But this was great fun. You guys had great questions, and I hope it was helpful. I will. Oh, I don't end it on the computer. I end it on the phone now. When I figure out how to end this, I will end this. But for now, thank you guys for coming, and I will see you guys next week.